The chamber was vast, suspended in the infinite void. Around the central, transparent platform that housed the Council's proceedings floated holographic projections of the galaxy's most powerful species, their voices as varied as their forms. On one side, the Torken, a race of brutish reptilian warriors, bickered among themselves, their thick, scaled bodies twitching with barely contained aggression. On the other side, the aliens, ethereal beings of pure light and sound, watched quietly, their consciousnesses spread across the room in a haze of shimmering energy. Between them, the Quaroth, a hive mind that spoke with a single voice, despite being composed of countless individual minds, hummed with collective focus. Earth, the voice of Karvak, the leader of the Quaroth, echoed through the chamber. Why has no one conquered it? Why does it persist in a state of such primitive chaos, when all the galaxies around it bend to the will of those more advanced? His multiple forms flickered, the translucent bodies of his people rippling as though in thought. It is an enigma. We have studied their history, their wars, their plagues, their destruction, yet they remain. At the far end of the room, Commander Alex Westbrook of the Torken grunted impatiently, his claws clicking against the hard surface of his chair. His red, reptilian eyes glowed with frustration. Enough of these debates. The facts are clear. Earth is weak. Its people are fragmented, primitive, easily broken. We could crush them in days. There is no reason they should be left untouched. You underestimate them, said Arana, a senior Aryan who floated lazily in the air, her form a swirling mass of light. Humans have resilience. We have observed them for centuries. They persist even when defeated, rebuild when destroyed. It is not the planet itself that is of interest, but their unpredictability. They are chaotic, yes, but they have something no other species has, the ability to adapt. Westbrook snorted, leaning forward. Adapt? It's nothing more than blind luck. We have superior technology, weapons capable of wiping out entire cities in an instant. They're primitive. Orana's light pulse flickered, almost as though she were laughing. You've seen their history, haven't you? Their wars, their suffering. They invent when faced with extinction. You failed to see the true power of humanity, Commander. They are dangerous in ways you cannot comprehend. A silence fell over the Council. For the first time, the Torken began to reconsider their position. Westbrook clenched his fists, his mind racing. The stories of human ingenuity, of how they rebuilt cities after the devastation of atomic war, or how they advanced from dirt-covered caves to exploring space in mere centuries, lingered in the back of his mind. His confidence faltered for a moment. Karvak's deep voice cut through the stillness. Then we must understand why they resist, before we make our move. We need to know the true nature of their power. The room was filled with murmurs of agreement. The decision was made. A fleet would be dispatched, not to destroy, but to investigate. The question was no longer whether Earth could be taken, but why it hadn't been yet. The stars outside Earth's atmosphere blinked silently as the Torken fleet entered orbit. A formation of sleek warships, each bristling with weapons and energy shields, hovered just beyond the range of Earth's primitive satellites. Commander Alex Westbrook stood at the helm of the flagship, his claws flexing in anticipation. His red, reptilian eyes narrowed as he stared at the blue and green orb below. The humans had no idea what was coming, and yet something in the back of his mind, something faint and uneasy, whispered that this mission would not be as easy as he had hoped. "We strike at dawn," Westbrook growled to his crew, his voice heavy with authority. "Wipe out their cities. We show them their place." The bridge of the Torken warship hummed with a low, menacing energy as the final preparations were made. The fleet's massive weapons systems powered up, ready to bombard Earth's surface. Westbrook's mind was already on the attack. The humans would fall in line, just like any other species that had been encountered before them. He had seen it happen countless times on other worlds. Their cities would burn. Their resistance would crumble. But as the fleet descended toward Earth's atmosphere, something strange began to unfold. Down below, the humans did not cower in fear. They had detected the alien presence almost immediately, their primitive radar systems alerting them to the incoming threat. Within hours, the global communications network buzzed with messages of preparedness. Governments, militaries, and civilians alike sprang into action, uniting in a way that Westbrook had not expected. There were no signs of panic, no pleading for mercy. Instead, the humans acted with determination. "Sir, the humans are responding," one of Westbrook's officers said, his voice tight with uncertainty. "They've activated their military network. We've intercepted messages. They are organizing." Westbrook growled, his tail twitching in irritation. Impossible. Their technology isn't nearly advanced enough to pose a real threat. The first salvo of Torcan bombardment lasers sliced through Earth's atmosphere, lighting up the sky like a blazing inferno. The ground shook as entire cities were vaporized in seconds. Yet, as the debris from the blast settled, something unexpected happened. The humans didn't retreat. Instead, they fought back. Westbrook's fleet was met with a barrage of fire, ancient jets, makeshift drones, and even civilian vehicles turned into weapons. The human tactics were crude, but they were relentless. Westbrook's ships were struck by unexpected bursts of fire, the Torcan shields flickering and sparking under the intensity. Primitive as their weapons were, the humans had managed to create a defense that was nearly impossible to predict. "Commander," one of the officers said, his voice strained, "they're adapting, faster than we anticipated. They're using guerrilla tactics, random attack patterns. We can't predict their next move." Westbrook's heart raced. This was unlike anything he had encountered. The Torcan had always relied on brute strength and sheer firepower, but these humans were not simply retreating. They were fighting back. Worse, they were doing it in ways he could not understand. The Torcan fleet regrouped, but the damage had been done. The humans had proven something critical. They could not be so easily broken. Westbrook could sense it now. This was no ordinary species. They were a species that, when pushed, would push back with everything they had. "Prepare to pull back," Westbrook ordered reluctantly. "We need to reassess. There's more to these humans than we thought." As the fleet retreated into the void of space, the full implications of the battle began to sink in. Earth had survived its first invasion, not because of technological superiority, but because of something far more difficult to quantify. Back at the Galactic Assembly, the air was thick with tension. The failure of the Torcan invasion had sent shockwaves through the Council. While the Torcan fleet limped back to their base, battered but not broken, the alien representatives gathered to discuss what had just transpired. Commander Westbrook stood before the Council, his usual confidence diminished by the unexpected turn of events. His fleet had been forced to retreat by a planet of primitives, humans, who had no business resisting them in the first place. Their tactics, Westbrook began, his voice tinged with frustration, were utterly chaotic, primitive. Yet they adapted faster than we could predict. How is that possible? Karvak, the Quaroth leader, leaned forward, his many transparent forms flickering as he spoke. "You didn't just underestimate them, Commander. You misunderstood them. They are not just survivors, they thrive in disorder. They embrace it. What we need to understand is why. The Aryans, who had been quietly observing from the periphery, hummed in agreement. Orana, the Aryan scholar, extended her form into a shimmering column of light. Humans are unlike any species we've encountered. They've faced extinction countless times throughout their history. Wars, disease, famine, and even self-inflicted catastrophe. And yet they persist. They don't just survive, they innovate. Every failure teaches them something new. Every tragedy, a chance for rebirth. The council fell silent, digesting Orana's words. For the first time, it seemed, they were beginning to grasp the full extent of the mystery that was humanity. "We must study them in depth," said Professor Ethan Daniels, an expert in human history from the Aryans. "Not just their weapons or tactics, but their history. We must understand how they have managed to endure so much. The key to their resilience may lie in their past." Daniel's suggestion was met with murmurs of approval. The council agreed to send a team to Earth, not to conquer, but to observe and understand. A fleet of scientific vessels was dispatched, each carrying a team of researchers, anthropologists and historians, tasked with uncovering the core of humanity's strength. The mission would be led by Daniels himself, who had spent decades studying human civilization from afar. The team began their investigation by delving into Earth's history. They started with the early days, prehistoric societies, the rise of civilizations, and the brutal wars that marked the planet's first steps toward unity. They examined the rise and fall of empires, the way humans repeatedly rebuilt from the ashes. They studied the two world wars of the 20th century, where humanity had fought against itself with unprecedented brutality, only to unite again afterward, rebuilding faster than ever before. But it wasn't just their ability to recover from physical destruction that intrigued Daniels and his team. It was the emotional resilience humans displayed in the face of loss. The stories of individuals who had risen to greatness in times of despair, who had led revolutions or fought for justice in the darkest of times, spoke to something deeper. It was an internal force, a drive to push forward, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed. One story, in particular, struck Daniels deeply. It was a story from the Second World War, of a woman named Rosa Mitchell, who had survived the bombing of her city. Not only had she rebuilt her own life after the war, but she had led efforts to help others, even when resources were scarce. She had started with nothing and created a network of support that spanned continents, bringing hope to millions. Her name was unknown to most, but her impact was undeniable. "Why do they keep going?" Daniels asked aloud, his voice barely more than a whisper. "What makes them rise again when all seems lost?" The more they uncovered, the more the council realized that Earth's resilience was not just a matter of survival instinct. It was a cultural phenomenon. Humanity's greatest strength was the deep-rooted belief that no matter how dire the circumstances, there was always a way forward. It was a drive, a spirit that transcended individual lives. And it was this, the Council now understood, that made humanity so dangerous. The more the Galactic Council delved into humanity's past, the more perplexed they became. The researchers, led by Professor Ethan Daniels, had uncovered countless stories of human struggle and survival, of cities rising from ruins, societies rebuilding after the most devastating wars, and individuals defying the odds in ways that no other species ever had. But there was something deeper, something that the Council couldn't quite place. It wasn't just humanity's resilience, it was their ability to remain unpredictable, to constantly adapt in ways that baffled even the most advanced minds in the galaxy. In the war room of the Torcan flagship, Westbrook studied the reports with growing unease. He had always relied on the Torkans' military superiority. Brute force and advanced weaponry were the keys to any victory. But now, even after their retreat, the reports of the human resistance kept flooding in. The humans hadn't just fought back, they had shifted the battlefield. Instead of relying on standard military tactics, they used their environment, their technology, and even their very culture to create new forms of warfare. One attack had been carried out by a civilian militia using homemade drones. Another had involved a group of hackers who infiltrated the Torkan communication network, causing temporary blackouts in key areas. "They don't fight like we do," Westbrook muttered, his claws tapping restlessly on the console. "They're all over the place. Their unpredictability, it's like fighting ghosts." On the other side of the council chamber, Orana, the Aryan scholar, delved deeper into the psychological aspects of humanity. It's not just that they survive, it's that they never stop changing. They reinvent themselves. A century ago, they didn't even have the technology to leave their planet. Now they're reaching out into space, building colonies, advancing at an unimaginable pace. They can shift from one strategy to another without notice, with no apparent fear of failure. No matter how many times they are knocked down, they always rise. The Quaroth, who had been studying the collective minds of various species for eons, felt a deep sense of unease. Their capacity for self-transformation, it's unlike anything we've ever encountered. Most species, even the most evolved, rely on stable patterns of behavior. The Quaroth, for example, operate on unity through shared thought. We are predictable, methodical. But humanity, they're volatile. Their unpredictability is their power, and that is something we can't control. As the Council continued its discussions, a dark realization began to settle over them. Humanity's greatest weapon was not just their technology or their willingness to fight. It was their ability to evolve in the face of danger. While most species would stick to their patterns and known methods, humans could reinvent their approach at a moment's notice, and that made them nearly impossible to predict. "Perhaps that's why we've never been able to conquer them," said Karvak, his many minds vibrating with thought. "It's not that they're weak. It's not that they don't have technology. It's that they can't be boxed in. You can't defeat what you can't understand." The realization hit the Council hard. They had never encountered a species so relentlessly adaptable, so able to overcome any challenge, no matter how immense. Humanity's unpredictability wasn't just a minor obstacle. It was the core of their survival, and it made them a species unlike any other. "They're not just surviving," Orana whispered, her light form pulsing with understanding. "They're becoming something more, something the galaxy has never seen before." The debate continued, but it was clear now that any decision made regarding Earth would not be as simple as they had hoped. The question was no longer how to conquer humanity, but what to do with a species that could change the very nature of the galaxy itself. The tension in the Galactic Assembly was palpable. The realization that humanity's unpredictable nature was not just a challenge to be overcome, but a force to be reckoned with, had thrown the Council into a deep and heated debate. For the first time in centuries, the fate of a planet hung in the balance, and no one could agree on what should be done with Earth. At the center of the chamber, Commander Alex Westbrook stood rigid, his eyes flashing with the anger of a warrior humiliated. He had seen civilizations fall before, their leaders crushed under the weight of Torkan might, their populations broken without hesitation. But humanity had refused to bow, had fought back. It was infuriating. "We must eliminate them before they become a real threat," Westbrook declared, his voice harsh, his claws digging into the armrests of his seat. "We cannot allow a species this chaotic to rise in power. If they adapt this fast in war, who's to say they won't outpace us technologically in a few hundred years? Their ability to evolve is a danger to every species in this galaxy. The Torkin were largely in agreement, their brutish voices growling in support. "We strike again," one of them hissed. "We crush them before they have a chance to grow any stronger." But across the chamber, the Aryans were less certain. Orana, who had spent the most time studying human psychology, spoke slowly, her light form swirling with careful thought. "If we attack again, we risk provoking something much more dangerous than we anticipate. We cannot simply view them as a primitive species any longer. They are evolving at a pace we cannot predict. The question is not whether to destroy them. It is whether we can stop them once they have achieved their full potential." Daniels, the human historian from the Aryans, stood to speak, his voice calm but firm. "We're not talking about a war of annihilation anymore. We're talking about a species that has repeatedly shown an ability to survive, to adapt, and to grow. Every time they've been pushed to the brink of destruction, they'd bounced back stronger. If we destroy them, we will only ensure that their resilience becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if we leave them be, if we study them, perhaps we can learn something vital about what it means to be a species on the edge of extinction." The Quaroth, whose species operated on the principle of efficiency and predictability, buzzed in quiet consensus. "We cannot control them. They resist every attempt at control. And yet, they may not need to be controlled. They may, in fact, be the key to something greater. If their adaptability is as boundless as we are now beginning to understand, perhaps their influence on the galaxy will be something transformative." A low murmur of agreement rippled through the council. The Quaroth had been known for their ability to see beyond immediate conflicts and anticipate long-term outcomes. And now their perspective was beginning to shift the balance of the debate. But Westbrook was not convinced. "You're all forgetting one thing," he snapped, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "They're human. They're unpredictable. Yes, but they're also flawed. They cannot be trusted. Their history is one of endless conflict, wars, divisions, and even self-destruction. What makes you think they won't one day rise up and challenge us? We should strike now, before they have a chance to evolve into something more dangerous." The debate raged on, but no side could gain the upper hand. It became clear that Earth was no longer just a target, it was a puzzle. And for the first time in the history of the Galactic Assembly, no one knew how to solve it. Finally, Karvak, the Quaroth leader, spoke again, his many minds coalescing into a single resonant voice. "Perhaps it is not a question of whether we should destroy them or not. It is a question of whether we can understand them first. If humanity is truly as unpredictable as we believe, then they may hold the key to something the galaxy has never known. But if we move forward without understanding their potential, we risk underestimating them. Again." The room fell silent. The implications of Karvak's words hung in the air like a shroud. The Council could no longer afford to view humanity as a mere nuisance or threat. They were a force in their own right, and how the galaxy responded to them would shape the future of the universe itself. "We need to send someone," Orana said softly, her light form steady with resolve. "Someone who can truly understand them. Not to conquer or destroy, but to learn." The Council was unanimous in its agreement. A new mission would be launched, one of observation, not war. And for the first time, the fate of Earth rested in the hands of a single individual. The decision was made. The Galactic Council would send an emissary to Earth, not to conquer or destroy, but to understand. The task would fall to a unique individual, a human scholar of all things, chosen for his deep understanding of his species' complexities. Professor Ethan Daniels, the lead historian from the Aryan faction, had spent years observing humanity from the far reaches of space. Now he would be sent directly to Earth, tasked with forging a relationship with the humans, learning from them, and, most critically, finding out what made them so unpredictably resilient. Daniel stood in the Grand Chamber, surrounded by members of the Council, his mind racing. He had never imagined being at the center of such a mission. His years of research had only scratched the surface of humanity's potential. Now he would be placed in the thick of it, face to face with a species that had confounded the most powerful minds in the galaxy. As the preparations for the mission unfolded, Westbrook's anger still burned. "This is madness," he muttered under his breath, glaring at Daniels from across the room. "You're going to study them. Observe them. What's to study? They're just humans, flawed, primitive, and dangerous." Daniels knew what the Torcan leader thought of the mission, but he couldn't afford to let it distract him. He had read the reports, seen the evidence, and come to a conclusion that was slowly becoming impossible to ignore. Humanity was not like the other species of the galaxy. They were unpredictable, yes, but there was more to them, something deeper. "Commander Westbrook," Daniel said calmly, stepping forward. "I understand your frustration, but this isn't about them or us. It's about understanding a species whose evolution has been shaped by constant chaos, conflict, and survival. Humanity is unpredictable because they thrive on unpredictability. Their very existence is a study in resilience." Westbrook sneered but said nothing. Daniels turned his attention to the Council. "Sending me to Earth is a risk," Daniels continued. "But if we want to understand the true potential of this species, I'm the best chance we've got. I know their history, their psyche. I'll go among them, learn their ways, and return with the knowledge we need. If we act too hastily, we risk not just misjudging them, we risk destroying an entire species that could be pivotal to the future of the galaxy." The Council members exchanged glances, sensing the gravity of the situation. Even Westbrook's fiery temper faltered as the full weight of Daniel's words sank in. He didn't like it, but Daniels was right. Earth wasn't a world they could just conquer, at least not without consequences. Karvak, the Quarith leader, spoke. "You're not going alone, Daniels. We will provide you with resources, technology to ensure your safety. But understand this, you are our eyes on Earth. If we feel the humans are becoming too dangerous, we will intervene. You will have one chance to prove that they are not a threat." Daniels nodded, his resolve firming. "I understand." And so, with a mixture of awe and trepidation, Daniels prepared to leave the safety of the Galactic Council and venture into the heart of Earth itself. As the fleet prepared for launch, the tension in the air was palpable. The mission was unlike any other, a gamble, a test, and perhaps the first step toward an uncertain future. As Daniels boarded the transport vessel, he took a final look at the stars beyond the Council's station, the vastness of space stretching out before him. Earth was a small blue dot in the distance, but it was a dot that had become the focus of the galaxy's attention. He had no idea what awaited him there, whether the humans would welcome him or see him as just another invader, but he had to go. For all their unpredictability, humanity held a secret that was worth uncovering. Ethan Daniels' shuttle pierced the atmosphere of Earth with a soft, shimmering trail of light. As it descended through the layers of clouds, the planet revealed itself in all its chaotic beauty, a swirling blue and green orb of life, teeming with energy, yet scarred by centuries of conflict and survival. Despite his extensive research on human history, Daniels felt a deep sense of awe at the sight. Earth was both beautiful and deeply flawed, a paradox that had fascinated him for years. The shuttle touched down on the outskirts of a bustling city, an unremarkable place by intergalactic standards. But to Daniels, it felt like the center of the universe. His mission had begun. He stepped out into the warm, humid air of Earth, his senses assaulted by the strange smells, sounds, and sights of a world in constant motion. People walked hurriedly on the streets, unaware of the galactic observer in their midst. They were, for the most part, going about their daily routines, arguing over politics, tending to their jobs, raising families, struggling, surviving. To the casual observer, Earth seemed like just another planet filled with chaotic, imperfect creatures. But Daniels knew better. The very disarray, the constant strife, was the secret to their strength. Humanity had built civilizations from dust, had pulled itself from the brink of annihilation time and again. To the galaxy, this planet was a puzzle, and Daniels was here to find the key. He spent his first few days in the city, observing, learning. It was nothing like the pristine, orderly worlds he had encountered in his years of study. Earth's cities were a blend of old and new, tattered skyscrapers next to gleaming steel structures, rusting machines running alongside cutting-edge technology. Yet, there was something compelling about it all. The humans lived in a world that seemed perpetually on the verge of collapse, and yet, every day they moved forward. It was the human spirit, something Daniels had read about in books, but now, standing in the midst of it, he could feel it in the air. It wasn't just the way they endured, it was how they rebuilt. The moment one disaster struck, they would not just try to survive. It was as if they learned from it, built something new in response. The first few days passed in a blur of meetings and observations. Daniels spoke to historians, scientists, and everyday people, gathering data on human progress, their sense of collective responsibility, and their drive to improve. Every conversation was different, unpredictable. On the fifth day, something unexpected happened. He was approached by a woman in her 30s, her face worn by hardship, but with an intensity in her eyes that reminded Daniels of the stories he had read. She introduced herself as Sophia, a local engineer, and immediately began talking to him about the city's infrastructure problems, the ways in which humans were tackling pollution, climate change, and resource depletion. "We don't always get it right," Sophia said, "but we never stop trying, even when it seems hopeless. You'd be surprised how much we're capable of when things get tough." Her words echoed in Daniel's mind long after their conversation had ended. This wasn't just a survival instinct. It was a choice. The humans didn't merely adapt, they actively chose to evolve. As Daniels watched Sophia disappear into the crowd, he realized that humanity's greatest strength lay not in their individual achievements, but in their collective capacity for change. They had the power to rewrite their future, not because they were destined to, but because they refused to accept defeat. He had come to study them, but now he understood. Humanity wasn't just a curiosity to be understood. They were a force that could change the very fabric of the galaxy. Ethan Daniels' understanding of humanity deepened with each passing day. The more he observed, the more he became convinced that there was something extraordinary about this species. The strength of their spirit, the depth of their ingenuity, and their ability to come together in the face of adversity, all these traits spoke to a resilience that surpassed mere survival. It was as though Earth itself was a crucible, forging them into something greater than any single individual could be. Yet, despite this growing admiration, Daniels couldn't ignore the growing tension back in orbit. The Galactic Council had been watching Earth closely through his reports, and Commander Westbrook's impatience was becoming palpable. Earth's unpredictability was still seen as a threat, one that would only grow if left unchecked. Daniels knew the stakes. If he couldn't prove humanity's potential to the Council, the Torkin might strike again, perhaps before Earth could ever fulfill that potential. It wasn't just about survival anymore. Earth had become a battleground, not just for the galaxy's future, but for its own soul. Could humanity rise above its flaws and show the galaxy that it was worthy of a place among the stars? One evening, as Daniel sat in a cafe watching the sun set over the city, he was approached by Sophia once again. This time, her face was serious, urgent even. "There's something I need you to see," she said quietly, glancing over her shoulder as if to make sure no one was listening. "It's not just about rebuilding our cities. It's about something far bigger, an idea we've been developing, but that we haven't fully shared with the rest of the world yet. It could change everything." Sophia led Daniels through narrow streets and across rooftops, past neighborhoods that seemed untouched by time and others that were starkly modern. They arrived at a large building, hidden beneath the city's bustling exterior, a research facility. Inside, a team of scientists, engineers, and activists were gathered around a massive holographic projection. The image was a map of Earth, one with markers showing rising sea levels, deforestation, and pollution hotspots. But as Daniels watched, the data began to shift and change, revealing innovative new technologies being developed by humans to counteract these crises. Green energy solutions, carbon capture techniques, AI-driven agriculture. All these solutions were emerging in real time, thanks to human collaboration, rapid innovation, and a refusal to give in to despair. "This is what we're building," Sophia said. "It's not just about surviving as individuals anymore. It's about survival as a species. We're learning from our mistakes and using everything we have to fix what we've broken. We're creating a new paradigm, a system where all of humanity works together for the common good. We're not just trying to fix the planet. We're trying to fix ourselves." Daniels felt a lump in his throat. He had studied human history, the wars, the injustices, the suffering. But what he was seeing now was something different. This was the culmination of centuries of pain and growth, a moment of collective realization that could change the course of history. He realized then that humanity was not just capable of surviving chaos, they were mastering it. And in mastering it, they were rewriting what it meant to be a species in the universe. It wasn't about perfection or even stability. It was about the will to adapt, to evolve, to build again and again, no matter the cost. The message from Earth was clear. They were not just trying to save themselves, but the very idea of life itself. And that, Daniels now knew, was what made them worth saving. He sent his final report to the Galactic Council, detailing what he had learned about humanity's potential. But as he hit send, he understood that his mission had shifted. He wasn't just an observer anymore. He was a witness to the birth of something greater than any one species. And as Earth looked toward the stars, humanity's unpredictability had become its greatest strength. The Galactic Council would have to decide. But Daniels knew, deep in his heart, that the future of the galaxy might one day rest in the hands of these unpredictable, resilient humans.